If your mind gets louder the moment life gets harder, the goal isn't to eliminate stress. It's to train your brain to stay useful while stress is happening. If you deal with racing thoughts, overthinking, irritability, decision fatigue, or that feeling that everything suddenly feels urgent, this video gives you practical ways to build better stress tolerance. These aren't generic tips like just relax or think positive. We're going into the less obvious ways your brain learns what to do under pressure, including a few techniques you can use in the middle of a stressful moment, not 3 hours later. 1. Stop asking, how do I get rid of this? The first shift is surprisingly simple. Stop treating every uncomfortable stress response as a problem that needs immediate removal. When your heart beats faster before a presentation, your brain may interpret that sensation as something is wrong. Instead, ask, what is this response preparing me to do? Your body is mobilizing energy. That doesn't automatically mean you're losing control. Research on stress appraisal suggests that whether we interpret a demanding situation as a threat or a challenge can influence how we respond physiologically and psychologically. You're not trying to convince yourself that stress feels good. You're teaching your brain that activation doesn't necessarily mean danger. And that distinction becomes useful in the next habit. 2. Give stress a job. When stress appears, immediately identify the task it is trying to help you perform. If you're nervous before a difficult conversation, the job might be pay attention. Before an interview, it might be retrieve information quickly. Before a deadline, it might be prioritize. This prevents your brain from turning vague tension into vague fear. Instead of, I'm stressed, say, my system is getting me ready to concentrate. That small change gives the sensation a function. 3. Separate the alarm from the assignment. Stress often combines two completely different things, the emotional alarm and the actual problem. Your heart is racing because tomorrow's meeting matters, but the assignment might simply be prepare 3 numbers and 1 question. Train yourself to ask, what is the actual assignment underneath the stress? This converts an enormous emotional cloud into something your brain can process. 4. Practice deliberate uncertainty. A major source of stress isn't difficulty, it's uncertainty. So occasionally practice leaving small things unresolved without immediately checking, researching, refreshing, asking, or deciding. Don't check whether someone has replied. Don't immediately look up the answer to a harmless question. Let a minor uncertainty remain open for a little while. You're giving your brain repeated evidence that I don't know yet is survivable. That's different from avoiding uncertainty. You're deliberately increasing your tolerance for it. 5. Build a not now reflex. Some thoughts deserve attention. They just don't deserve attention right now. When a stressful thought appears during work, driving, dinner, or another task, tell yourself, not now. I'll handle this at 6:30. Then actually give yourself a time to revisit it. This is different from suppression. You're not saying the thought is forbidden, you're assigning it a future appointment. Your brain gradually learns that every thought doesn't require an immediate response. 6. Change your prediction before changing your feeling. Most people try to calm themselves by changing how they feel. Try changing what you predict instead. Before a stressful event, ask, what do I think will happen? Then ask, what is another realistic outcome? Not the fantasy outcome. Not everything will be perfect. Just another plausible outcome. Your brain constantly predicts what comes next. Training yourself to generate more than one plausible future reduces the feeling that the worst-case scenario is the only possible future. 7. Use the what would I notice question. Stress narrows attention. So instead of telling yourself to calm down, deliberately widen what you notice. Ask, what else is happening around me? Notice the room, the temperature, another person's expression, sounds in the background, or what your hands are doing. This isn't about becoming hyper-aware. It's about reminding your brain that the stressful thing is part of your environment, not the entire environment. 8. Train yourself to find the next variable. When overwhelmed, people often try to solve the entire situation. That's exhausting. Instead, identify the next variable you can influence. Not the whole project, not the other person's behavior, not the final outcome, just the next variable. If you're worried about money, perhaps the next variable is knowing your actual monthly expenses. If you're worried about work, perhaps it's clarifying the deadline. Stress becomes more manageable when your brain can distinguish between what is controllable, influenceable, and completely outside your control. 9. Use good enough before you need it. Perfectionism becomes especially expensive under stress because it creates dozens of tiny decisions. So practice stopping at good enough on low-stakes tasks. Send the reasonable email. Choose the acceptable option. Finish the household task without optimizing it. You're not lowering your standards where quality matters. You're training your brain to recognize that completion can sometimes be more valuable than refinement. That skill becomes extremely useful when you're under pressure and cognitive resources are limited. 10. Rehearse recovery, not just performance. People mentally rehearse stressful events by imagining themselves performing perfectly. Try rehearsing what happens after something goes wrong. Imagine stumbling over an answer. Imagine receiving criticism. Imagine a plan changing. Then visualize yourself taking the next useful action. This teaches your brain something powerful. Even if the moment isn't perfect, I have a recovery sequence. That can make uncertainty feel less threatening. 11. Turn mistakes into data before turning them into identity. After something goes wrong, separate 3 statements. I made an error. The situation had these contributing factors. I am an incompetent person. Only the first 2 are useful. The third converts an event into an identity. Train your brain to conduct a brief post-event analysis. What happened? What contributed? What can be changed? And what should simply be accepted? This is more useful than replaying the event emotionally. 12. Use a stress-specific exhale. You've probably heard about breathing exercises, but here's the useful distinction. Don't treat breathing as a magical relaxation button. During a stressful moment, make your exhale slightly longer than your inhale for several comfortable breaths. The goal isn't to breathe as deeply as possible or force your heart rate down. It's to give your breathing a slower, more controlled rhythm while you remain engaged with the situation. Breathing and autonomic regulation are closely connected, and research has examined heart rate variability as one marker of stress-related physiological regulation. Think of this as changing the operating rhythm, not escaping the problem. 13. Practice stopping the second stressor. Sometimes the original stressor is manageable. The second stressor is what destroys you. You miss a deadline, then attack yourself. Someone criticizes you, then replay the conversation for 2 hours. You make a mistake, then predict what it means for your entire future. Train yourself to identify the second stressor. Ask, what am I adding to this situation that isn't actually happening? Often, that's where a huge amount of unnecessary suffering lives. 14. Create a first 60 seconds protocol. Don't wait until you're overwhelmed to decide what you'll do. Create a simple first-minute sequence for stressful moments. For example, stop talking, slow your breathing, look around, identify the actual problem, then choose one action. The exact sequence matters less than having one. Stress reduces the quality of complex decision-making, so pre-deciding your first response can prevent you from improvising while overloaded. Research in high-stress performance settings illustrates how acute stress can impair performance and decision-making. 15. Lower your decision count during high-stress days. If you know tomorrow will be difficult, remove unnecessary decisions tonight. Choose the clothes, prepare the food, write down the first task, put important items where you'll find them. This isn't about productivity. It's about protecting cognitive bandwidth. Stress already consumes attention. There is little value in spending additional mental energy deciding what to eat at 7:30 in the morning when tomorrow's real challenge is an important presentation. 16. Give your brain a concrete ending. Some stressful activities don't have a natural stopping point. Emails can continue forever. News can continue forever. Work can continue forever. So create an artificial ending. At the end of a stressful work block, write one sentence. Tomorrow I start with blank. That sentence tells your brain the problem has been parked somewhere concrete. You're not pretending the work is finished. You're making the next step visible. 17. Practice switching from why to what. Why is this happening to me? Why can't I handle this? Why did they do that? In certain situations, whys can be useful, but these questions can become endless. Try what instead. What exactly happened? What do I need? What can I influence? What happens next? You aren't denying your emotions. You're redirecting attention from explanation loops toward information and action. 18. Use a two-speed brain. Train yourself to deliberately alternate between fast thinking and slow thinking. For routine decisions, move quickly. For high-consequence decisions, slow down. This sounds obvious, but many stressed people do the opposite. They overthink trivial choices while making major decisions emotionally. Create a simple rule. Low consequence? Decide. High consequence? Pause. This reduces the chance that stress determines the speed of your thinking. 19. Make your environment predictable in one small area. When everything feels chaotic, create one predictable zone. Maybe it's your desk. Maybe it's the first 5 minutes of your morning. Maybe it's the way you organize your work bag. The point isn't organization for its own sake. Predictable cues reduce the number of small decisions your brain has to make. You can't control everything around you, but you can create islands of predictability inside an unpredictable day. 20. Use awe to shrink the mental zoom. Here's a less obvious one. Spend a few minutes deliberately experiencing something that makes your normal concerns feel smaller. A vast landscape, powerful music, the night sky, a great work of art, or even watching something enormous in nature. Awe is associated with a sense of vastness that can shift attention away from the narrow self. Research is increasingly examining awe as a resilience and well-being practice, including recent randomized research showing reductions in stress in an intervention group. You don't need to make this mystical. You're simply changing the scale at which your brain is processing your current problem. 21. Practice naming the exact emotion. Stressed is often too vague. Are you embarrassed, frustrated, overloaded, uncertain, jealous, disappointed, ashamed? The more precisely you identify the experience, the easier it becomes to choose an appropriate response. You don't need a perfect psychological label. Just get more specific than, I feel bad. 22. Separate physical stress from mental stress. Sometimes you're mentally worried. Sometimes you're physically depleted, and your brain interprets that state as a psychological problem. Before analyzing everything, check the body. Have you been sitting for 6 hours? Have you eaten? Have you been staring at a screen? Have you been indoors all day? Are you exhausted? This doesn't mean every stressful feeling is caused by your body. It means your brain doesn't operate separately from it. 23. Use movement as a state transition. Don't think of movement only as exercise. Use it as a transition. After a difficult meeting, walk before beginning the next task. After work, move before entering your evening routine. After an argument, change your physical location before continuing to analyze it. You're creating a physical boundary between one state and the next. That can be especially useful when stress from one situation keeps leaking into everything afterward. 24. Train context switching intentionally. Stress becomes worse when your brain carries several unfinished situations simultaneously. So practice deliberately closing one context before entering another. Finish the call. Put the phone down. Take one breath. State what you're doing next. Then begin. It sounds almost ridiculously simple, but the purpose is to stop mentally dragging the previous situation into the next one. 25. Use a one-sentence reality check. When your mind starts predicting disaster, don't argue with it for 20 minutes. Use one sentence. What do I know for sure right now? Not what might happen, not what you fear. What do you actually know? This creates separation between evidence and prediction. And that separation is one of the most useful things you can build when your mind is running ahead of reality. 26. Train your brain to receive feedback without immediate defense. The next time someone gives you criticism, resist the urge to explain yourself immediately. Instead, ask, what part of that do you think I should change? You're converting a socially threatening interaction into information gathering. You don't have to agree with the criticism. You don't even have to like how it was delivered. You're training yourself to remain cognitively available while emotionally activated. 27. Use reappraisal before the stressor, not only during it. Cognitive reappraisal works by changing the meaning you assign to an event. And you don't have to wait until you're already overwhelmed. Before a difficult event, ask, what is another accurate way to interpret this? For example, instead of they are judging me, try they are deciding whether what I'm presenting is useful. That doesn't guarantee a positive outcome. It changes the psychological frame through which you're entering the situation. Studies of emotion regulation have found that cognitive reappraisal can influence physiological and psychological responses to stress and recovery. 28. Build a recovery score. At the end of a stressful situation, don't only ask, how stressful was that? Ask, how quickly did I recover? That is a much more useful metric. Maybe your heart raced. Maybe you were irritated. Maybe you made a mistake. But did you recover in 5 minutes instead of 50? Did you return to your normal task? Did you stop replaying the event? You're teaching yourself that resilience isn't never getting activated. It's becoming better at returning. 29. Write the stressor from the outside. When something is looping in your head, write about it in third person. Instead of, I can't believe I messed this up, write, Alex is worried because the presentation didn't go as planned. That small linguistic distance can make the situation easier to examine rather than experience entirely from inside it. You're turning yourself from the person trapped inside the story into an observer who can inspect it. 30. Use a tomorrow test. When you're obsessing over something at night, ask, if this happens, will tomorrow me actually need me to solve it at midnight? If yes, write the next action down. If no, tell yourself, this is tomorrow's problem. The important part is writing down the action when one exists. Otherwise, your brain may keep repeating the thought because it doesn't trust that you'll remember it. 31. Practice safe emotional expression instead of constant suppression. Being calm doesn't mean becoming emotionally silent. If you're angry, disappointed, or overwhelmed, give the emotion a controlled outlet. Write honestly. Talk to someone you trust. Having someone you trust is a luxury nowadays. Cherish it. Describe what happened, name what you felt, then move toward what you want to do next. Research on expressive writing continues to explore how structured writing can support emotion regulation, although its effects vary by person and context. The goal isn't to endlessly revisit the emotion. It's to process it instead of pretending it doesn't exist. 32. Train the skill of returning. Here's one of the most important ideas in the entire video. You will lose focus. You will get irritated. You will overthink. You will have stressful days. The training isn't to prevent every interruption. It's the return. I call it the emergence. You can call it whatever you like. You notice you're spiraling. You recognize it. You return to the conversation. You return to the task. You return to the present problem. Every return is practice. A resilient brain isn't one that never wanders into stress. It's one that learns the route back. 33. End stressful days with evidence. Before going to bed after a difficult day, don't make a giant gratitude list if that doesn't feel natural. Instead, identify 3 pieces of evidence. One thing I handled. One thing I learned. One thing I can leave unfinished. This gives your brain a more accurate closing summary. Because stressed brains are often very good at remembering what went wrong and surprisingly bad at registering what they successfully handled. You are deliberately teaching it to record the entire day, not just the most emotionally intense parts. And that's ultimately what training your brain to handle stress better is about. Not becoming someone who never feels overwhelmed. Not pretending difficult things are easy. Not trying to maintain some permanently calm personality. It's learning to recognize activation without automatically interpreting it as danger. It's learning to distinguish a problem from a prediction. It's learning to recover after mistakes. It's learning when to act, when to wait, when to accept uncertainty, and when to stop adding a second layer of stress to the first. And the good news is that these aren't traits you're either born with or without. Every time you respond differently to a stressful situation, you're giving your brain another piece of evidence about how that situation can be handled. So don't try all 33 tomorrow. Pick 2 that fit the kind of stress you experience most often. Practice them when the stakes are low. Then, when the stakes become high, you won't be inventing a response from scratch. You'll already have one. If this video gave you something genuinely useful that you can apply to your own life, consider liking the video and subscribing to Simple Ways of Life. And if you know someone who tends to carry stress long after the stressful moment is over, this might be worth sharing with them too. See you in the next video with useful and simple ways of life.